Jewish people are called Am Olam, which literally means that they have been around forever and they have a special power of existing for all the generations, for hundreds, thousands of years, and they are an integral part of the very world itself. And this is used to explain why other nations have come and gone, and the Jewish people have existed 2,000, 3,000 years, 4,000 years, depending on how you count it, and they constantly rejuvenate themselves, and they constantly get difficult situations, overcome them, and have rebirth. Now, this personally for me is a very important concept, because my parents went through the Holocaust. They had a life before the war. This life was totally destroyed. They went to the States and they rebuilt themselves and created a wonderful family and prosperity and happiness, even though they had such difficult times. So one could say, good, a lot of people have gone through difficult times and have accomplished the ability to rebuild themselves. But what I want to contend is that this is an integral part of the very essence of the Jewish people. There's a myth about the phoenix. The phoenix is a bird that recreates itself from its ashes. The Jewish people are an eternal nation because they can constantly recreate themselves, and we have the holidays which we have at this time as an example of how we recreate ourselves every year. We're coming up now to what is called the Passover, and the Passover first starts off with a commandment which it says, HaChodesh Hazeh Lochem. This month is for you. Now the question is, what does it mean this month is for you? So there are many explanations on different levels. But the deep understanding of this is that now you're starting time. You're starting anew. The Jewish people every year renew themselves, and since every year they renew themselves, they adjust themselves to that renewal, and by adjusting themselves to renewal, they get a power to be able to deal with the situation as it is, and not be stuck with the situation as it was once. What do I mean by this? What's the concept of raising yourself from the ashes? So we have two rituals which ashes are used, are very important, and we'll see this concept expressed in these two rituals. Before we come to the Passover holiday, we have 4 different parts of the Torah which are read, and each represents a different concept. The first parsha which we read is called Parshas Shkalim, which means the parsha of giving. Each person has to give a half of a shekel. What is the idea of a half of a shekel? The idea is that each individual contributes to the whole, and the whole is not complete without each individual. So the first thing we have to do is recognize the power which we have within ourselves. What are our characteristics? What are our capabilities? That is Parshas Shkalim. In order to continue to rejuvenate ourselves, we have to go a step further. The next step is called Parshas Zachor. Parshas Zachor indicates that there are negative powers in this world, and as long as we are held back by these negative powers, we're never going to accomplish what we have to accomplish. So when we read Parshas Zachor, remember, listen, be careful. Even though you're great, you're wonderful, you have great powers, but you have to be careful of the negativity which exists in everybody. Once we're aware of our capabilities and aware of the negative which we have, then comes Parshas Porah. Parshas Porah is literally rejuvenation, rebirth. The Torah tells us if someone dies, that's a negative thing. How do we overcome death? We take a red calf, we burn it, take the ashes of this red calf, and we mix it together with Mayim Chaim, the water of life, And with a small tree and a large tree, we mix them together and sprinkle themselves on us. What does this mean? This means we have to destroy all the negativity which we had until now, mix this negativity with positive things, with Mayim Chaim, and realize we're small and we're large. We have great capabilities, we have difficulties, and we can overcome all of them by rejuvenating ourselves. Then the next parsha, the next thing which we read is Parshas HaChodesh. HaChodesh hazeh lochem. You can start life anew. You can start life with a new approach to everything, and all the negative which you've had until now does not exist. You start with a new existence. I have a friend of mine who learned together with me in yeshiva. And at the age of 15, I called him up and asked him, let's go back to yeshiva. Together we learned the same yeshiva. So he said, listen, Rabbi, I wasn't Rabbi, Avraham, I'm out of this business. I cannot go to yeshiva. I've had enough of Judaism. I had enough of all these laws. Forget it. So I was very upset that he didn't come, but all right. I started my life, and at that time, I realized something, that the direction that I'm going is a direction which constantly can give me a new perspective. So until now, I was friendly with him. Now I'll get my new friends. Okay, this guy went, and he was non-religious, did every Isser in the Olam, and the only girls he hung out with non-Jewish girls, and by accident he married a Jewish girl. Then he had his first son. When he had his first son, he thought to himself, what type of heritage am I going to give to this son of mine? And he said, okay, as they like to say, we have to make maslul mechadash. We have to reorganize our life and our direction. And at that time, he decided he's starting anew from the beginning, and he created a tremendous family, and he created tremendous accomplishments in his community. That is what we can do every year. We can rejuvenate ourselves every year when we come to the Passover Seder. The Passover Seder is to take all these ideas which we've accumulated and to concentrate them into one evening, to renew ourselves, our relationship with the family, and our relationship with everything which we have around us, and then it's possible to start anew. If you are starting anew every year, so you don't live 50 years, 60 years, every year is a new year. And since every year is a new year, you have a special power for that year. The rabbis today are 95 years old, 100 years old, 103 years old. How do they live so long? The answer is that if they were still living with the same concepts when they were 30, then that when they're 95, it would be impossible for them to continue. The ability for them to continue is that every year they renew themselves. And there is a Mishnah of us that tells us that every 10 years we have to re-establish what the major direction is that we want to go. The Mishnah says, we'll start off from when a person is 18 years old, he starts studying Talmud. Or excuse me, at 15 years old, he starts studying Talmud. 18, he gets married. At 20, he has tremendous ability to accomplish things. At 30, he becomes more knowledgeable. At 40, he becomes somebody that understands things. And each of these stages are different ways to relate to life and to use the power of that period of time. And if we learn how to use the power of that period of time, we are constantly renewing ourselves. We are constantly growing out of the ashes. And if we grow out of the ashes each time, we continue with new strength, and that gives us the ability to live to 90, to 100, 120, Be'ezrat Hashem. So we have to use this period of time to reestablish our direction, and when we do that, we get a powerful, powerful new life. When I bless people, I always say to them, you should have orech yomim v'shanim. You should have long days and years. What does it mean, long days and long years? Long days means you should live for a long time. Long years, you should live for a long time. No. that each day should be with a tremendous amount of content. And when each day has a tremendous amount of content, that gives you the ability to live for many years. I wish you all the ability to learn and understand and have arichas yomim to renew yourselves.